Hi, and welcome to the Dynamic Duel podcast, a weekly show where we review superhero films and debate the superiority between Marvel and DC by comparing their characters in stat-based battle simulations. I'm Marvelous Joe.
And I'm his twin brother, Johnny DC.
And in this episode, this is a big episode, we're going to learn who would win in a fight between Plastic Man versus Mr. Fantastic. It's going to be comics' first stretchy superhero versus Marvel's main stretchy superhero.
Yeah, a few people have reached out to us asking, well, why not Elongated Man versus Mr. Fantastic? And I think Plastic Man just brings a little bit more to the game with his shape-shifting abilities. I mean, Elongated Man is a lot more like Mr. Fantastic, but he's sort of like Mr. Fantastic light. Like, he's not as smart, arguably. He just has a little bit less going for him. I think Plastic Man puts up much more of a fight. And of course, we're doing this episode because our last episode was a review of the 2005 movie Fantastic Four. And all of this is in lead up to our 200th episode where we're going to pit the JSA versus the Fantastic Four.
Yeah, that's going to be in a few months, so look forward to that. Before we get into our Plastic Man versus Mr. Fantastic duel, we're going to go over the comic book movie news that happened in the past week. We did find one news item to talk about, and that's involving the WandaVision television show that's going to be on Disney Plus either later this year or early next year. The show has been upped to 9 episodes, and we're going to talk about Evan Peters' mysterious casting.
As always, feel free to jump around our episode to whatever segment you want to listen to. The segment times are in our episode description.
Also, as always, don't forget to rate us or review us on whatever platform you're listening to us on, whether that be Podbean or CastBox, Stitcher, and of course, Apple Podcasts. If you can't rate us or review us on your platform that you're listening to us on, please at least make sure you're subscribed to the show, like if you're listening on platforms such as Spotify or Pandora or something like that. But with that out of the way,
quick, to the No Prize. So a No Prize is an award that Marvel used to give out up until the 90s to fans. Our version, the Dynamic Duel No Prize, is a digital award that we post on social media that I personally draw for those who we feel gave the best answer to our question of the week. Last week's question tied into the news that Warner Brothers is courting Michael Keaton to appear in the upcoming Flashpoint film. So our question was, who would you prefer to see in the upcoming Flash movie? Jeffrey Dean Morgan's Thomas Wayne from the Flashpoint timeline from BVS, or Michael Keaton's Bruce Wayne from Tim Burton's Batman films, and why?
I'm really torn on this question. Honestly, I don't know who I want more because both roles can lead to interesting paths for the Flashpoint movie plot, and all of that was really well broken down in the answers that we got. So let's go down the honorable mentions before we name our No Prize winner.
Right, there were no wrong answers here, but our first honorable mention goes to Michael Haggerty, who gave the answer of both, saying it was an impossible choice, because Morgan is perfect for the role, but Keaton could set up Batman Beyond, and a lot of these answers actually reference Batman Beyond, considering the rumor that Michael Keaton would be playing an older Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, and on that note, Ken Johnson, Brandon Estergaard, and Nightwing Superman all get honorable mention, saying that they would prefer to see Keaton in the role because he could help set up a potential Batman Beyond spinoff.
Jacob Bell gave the answer of Jeffrey Dean Morgan's Thomas Wayne, saying he would rather have the film build an established DCEU than have a multiverse, explaining that The Flash could give Thomas Wayne's letter to Ben Affleck's Batman, and then, the timeline would mess up, and all of a sudden, Robert Pattinson's Batman would appear.
That would be a great setup.
Yeah, it would give us an in-continuity reason, sort of, for why Robert Pattinson all of a sudden is Batman.
Plus, I'd like to see Ben Affleck take on the role at least one more time, if not just for a cameo.
Yeah, just a cameo to say bye to the role, essentially, for audiences to say bye to him.
Alex Fowler gets honorable mention, saying he would prefer to see Keaton's Batman because he loves the old and worn-out Batman like in the Dark Knight Returns series by Frank Miller.
Yeah, I still remember the first time I read that graphic novel. So good. Batman is awesome in that. J.P. Lunai said he would rather see Michael Keaton as Batman, including that he'd also like to see Bale's Batman and introduce the new Matt Reeves Batman in the same film. Just like a multiverse of Batman. The Batverse, as it were. It could be called Flashpoint, Into the Batverse.
Hey, it would make money. Joshua Smith gets honorable mention, saying that he would prefer to see Keaton's Batman in the film because Keaton would fit in better with the more recent lighthearted DC Comics films, such as, Shazam and Aquaman and Wonder Woman. A Flashpoint movie involving Jeffrey Dean Morgan as Thomas Wayne would probably be a pretty dark movie.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Neil Poling said that he would prefer to see Jeffrey Dean Morgan as Thomas Wayne, saying that they should save Keaton for a separate Batman Beyond franchise. And I don't hate that, it's sort of the best of both worlds.
Jeremy Orr said he'd like to see both Jeffrey Dean Morgan as Thomas Wayne because he's perfect for the role, Flash can meet up with him and then both go forward in time to see Michael Keaton's Bruce Wayne mentoring Terry McGinnis. Of course, again, setting up Batman Beyond.
York Bailey said that he would like to see Jeffrey Dean Morgan's Thomas Wayne, saying that it would bring everything full circle with Batman v Superman. And I would just love that as well. If you have HBO Max, they've replaced the theatrical version of BVS with the Ultimate Edition. It's so much better. If you haven't seen it yet, check it out because it's really good. And anything that ties into that film to help make that film stronger is a plus in my book.
Joel Seagrave said he'd prefer to see Keaton's Batman, though he would actually prefer to see George Clooney in the role of Bruce Wayne as a way for Clooney to redeem himself. And
that's interesting.
I don't know how I feel about that.
I mean, if you think about it, if talks fall through with Keaton, Warner Brothers has a whole stable of Batman that they could go to.
That's true.
Hunter Holmgren said that he would prefer to see Michael Keaton's Bruce Wayne, saying that he simply loved Tim Burton's version of the character. And for a lot of people, that was their first and favorite version of Batman.
Jody Sellers said that he'd prefer to see Michael Keaton's Bruce Wayne in the Flash movie because he thinks Keaton's presence can help reinvigorate the DC universe as it's starting to readjust its tone. Whereas Jeffrey Dean Morgan would probably be of a similar tone to the previous DCEU movies that we've already gotten. I'm finding that a lot of these answers kind of fall in line with whether or not people appreciated the Snyderverse, essentially, or not.
Right.
If they were big fans of Man of Steel and BVS, it seems that they're more likely to go with Thomas Wayne. And people who are trying to get away from that seem to be going more in the direction of Michael Keaton.
I think that observation definitely holds true for the next answer, given by Adam Spees, who hates BVS, and said he would prefer to see Keaton come back because it would be more significant to show a Batman that a whole generation knows and loves.
That's the other trade-off. Like, do you show the Batman that people have already seen, or do you show a new character, Thomas Wayne's version of Batman?
Honestly, I'm convinced by all of these answers. All of these answers sway me in both directions.
Our final honorable mention goes to Miggy Madangian, who said he would like to see Jeffrey Dean Morgan's Thomas Wayne in the Flash movie because he would rather see a gruff, badass Batman rather than an old teacher Batman that Michael Keaton's character would be.
See, I'm already swayed in the other direction now. But the winner of this week's No Prize goes to David Allen Reed, who chose Jeffrey Dean Morgan as Thomas Wayne, not only because his presence would be more faithful to the source material in Flashpoint, but he also reminded me that it would give us the chance to see Lauren Cohen as the Joker. Because, as you may know, in the Flashpoint storyline, Bruce Wayne's father becomes Batman, and his mother becomes the Joker, made insane with grief over the loss of her son. And I just love that idea. I love that concept. And I would love to see Lauren Cohen play that role.
And I know some people may be saying that we already have enough cinematic versions of Batman and Joker, but it would be clear within this film, as the Flash traverses the multiverse, that these depictions of Batman and Joker would be a one-off appearance.
Right.
I do really love the Thomas Wayne version of Batman because he's just very much the Punisher wearing Batman's costumes, which I think is hilarious. And I think I would actually rather like to see that more than Batman Beyond.
Yeah, I think so too. As cool as that would be, I think I like Flashpoint more than Batman Beyond. Is that blasphemy? Probably to some people.
And again, that may all depend on whether you're a bigger fan of DC comics, such as Flashpoint, or DC cartoons, such as Batman Beyond.
Yeah, that's true. You know, there's probably a sizable audience out there who are more familiar with the many DC animated series that were put out and maybe never read a DC comic.
But congrats again to David Allen Reed. You win this week's No Prize. If you, the listener, want to win your own dynamic dual No Prize, go ahead and stay tuned to later on this episode when we'll be asking another question of the week. And now that that's done,
on to the news.
All right, according to a website, Murphy's Multiverse, which apparently has an insider into the WandaVision Disney Plus television show, we have two news scoops for you. The first one is that WandaVision allegedly is going to have more than 6 episodes. It's been established by Kevin Feige previously that all of the Marvel Plus Disney television shows are going to be just 6 episodes. But now we've learned that it looks like WandaVision is going to have 9. So 3 episodes in addition to the 6 that every other show is going to get.
So it's like an extra film almost.
Yeah, which is pretty awesome. You know that the show has a lot of ground to cover between the romance between Vision and the Scarlet Witch, the conception of their kids, the growth of their kids, the loss of their kids, and the fallout from that event.
And potentially the establishment of the multiverse.
Right, because as we know, this series is going to lead into the Doctor Strange sequel. So I think this is great news. Not only does it mean that we're going to get more story, it also shows that the studio has enough confidence in the quality of its content to bring us more of it.
I mean, that's one way to look at it, and, that's definitely encouraging, but I'm also kind of surprised in the fact that I thought that these were being shot sort of like films. And if all of a sudden your script ends up with 3 extra hours of content, how solid was your script?
Solid as hell, obviously. So damn solid that none of it's getting cut out.
I guess.
Yeah, I see nothing but good news there.
I mean, that also probably means that the show will be delayed or pushed back from when it was originally intended. I mean, that's already happened, but it'll be delayed even further.
I actually don't have a problem with that because the Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness movie has been delayed by about a year. So if this series gets released later, it'll just be released that much closer to Doctor Strange's new release date.
Nah, well, that makes sense.
In other interesting news, we learned that Evan Peters has been cast in an as-yet undisclosed role for the WandaVision series.
Now, when I first heard that he may have been cast, I immediately thought of Quicksilver. I was like, what? Are they already establishing the multiverse with another version of Quicksilver? Because he, of course, played the character in the Fox X-Men franchise.
That's what I thought too, actually. I thought he was going to play an alternate version of Wanda's brother, Pietro, who, of course, was portrayed by Aaron Taylor Johnson in the Avengers Age of Ultron movie, and he died in that film. But then a lot of rumors started making the rounds that Evan Peters was actually going to be playing the character of Mephisto, which would make a lot of sense as well, considering his involvement with the Scarlet Witch's kids within the comics. If you're not aware, the twins that were conceived by the Vision and Scarlet Witch were brought to life through magic, because of course, Vision can't conceive. And it turns out that these magic twins were actually pieces of Mephisto's soul. And when Mephisto brought them back into himself, the children vanished, which drove the Scarlet Witch mad.
Right, you can learn all about this in our Zatanna versus Scarlet Witch Duel episode.
Right. Now, other people are saying that he might be playing Nicholas Scratch, who is the sorceress son of Agatha Harkness. Agatha Harkness in the comics is a witch from the Salem era who trains Scarlet Witch in magic and helps conjure up her twin children. She's going to be played by Catherine Hahn in the WandaVision series. And that theory makes sense to me too, because I think Evan Peters looks like he could play the son of Catherine Hahn.
What if Evan Peters is playing one of the children, like aged?
It's possible. In the comic books, Wanda and Vision's children become Speed and Wiccan, and they're twins, so they could be played by one actor, possibly. Who knows? There's a whole lot of ideas and a whole lot of speculation to be had regarding this role.
This all brings us to our question of the week. What character do you hope Evan Peters will play in the upcoming WandaVision series?
Post your answer to our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or email us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com. We'll pick our favorite answer and draw that person a Dynamic Duel No Prize that we'll post to social media. I'm hoping we get a lot of great reasoning for your guys' answers. I'm really looking forward to see if we get any new theories, though. That would be really interesting. But that does it for this episode's news, so let's go ahead and get into our main event, where we find out who would win in a fight between the stretchy characters of Plastic Man and Mr. Fantastic.
Let's do it!
All right, Plastic Man versus Mr. Fantastic. This episode has been a long time coming. I think Mr. Fantastic is the most popular Marvel superhero that we have yet to do a duel episode with, so I'm really excited about this one. He's among Marvel's like A or B listers, I think. Probably an A lister. And I'm really surprised that it's taken us, 4 years to get to this duel episode.
Yeah, because Plastic Man, I mean, he's never been a commercial success, but he's pretty popular as well. He had his own animated series and stuff, so...
We've had some duel episodes with Elastic characters, such as our Venom versus Clayface match and our Elastigirl versus Ms. Marvel match, but this is the one that we've all been waiting for. A lot of pride writing on this particular matchup for Jonathan and myself. Whoever loses this one is going to be feeling it for sure. So I really hope that Mr. Fantastic wins this one. But we'll see. If you've never listened to one of our duel episodes before, the way we determine a winner between these two characters is by running 1,000 Monte Carlo simulations using the character's statistics. Now, what is a Monte Carlo simulation? Well, it's a probabilistic model that randomizes data over and over again to determine an outcome.
Right, and in our case, it does that by randomizing the data point along a normal distribution, which is a bell curve. This randomization accounts for all the variables in battle.
The stats we use are based off of the official Marvel Power Grid,
which we use to extrapolate the DC character statistics, and we include a few more stat categories to make a more robust simulation.
Yeah, when we run these 1000 simulations, we get a percentage of wins for each character, and we determine the character with the higher percentage of wins to be the ultimate victor, given that they're more likely to win any given match. No character ever wins 100% of the time.
Right, there's always a way for Batman to defeat Superman, for example.
So we feel this particular method falls perfectly in line with the precedent that's been established in the comic book stories.
And of course, this Monte Carlo method is the same approach that the old Spike TV series Deadliest Warrior took when they pit ancient warrior cultures against each other.
Yeah, and going back to the reason why we didn't go with Elongated Man for this particular matchup, what Deadliest Warrior used to do was compare warriors like a Spartan versus a ninja. They never used to compare like a ninja versus a ninja because that would just result in a 50-50 split, right? So when determining which battles to go with, we find that it's better to compare characters that are similar, but also different enough to make for an interesting match. Pitting Elongated Man against Mr. Fantastic is like pitting a ninja versus a ninja, as opposed to Plastic Man, who's different enough to Mr. Fantastic's ninja.
Right, and this was a lesson we learned the hard way when we pit Green Arrow versus Hawkeye, and they ended up with the same exact stats.
Right.
But of course, with this method, there's no bias. Joseph and I are both heavily biased for both Marvel and DC, respectively. And this was the most scientific approach we could think to take to find who would actually win between these characters. Before we run the simulations, though, we like to give a breakdown of each of the characters' histories and abilities before we get into an improvised speculation on how we think one of the 1000 matches would actually play out.
Yeah, the final results of the match aren't based upon our speculation of how the battle would go, but rather the Monte Carlo simulation results themselves.
So let's get into the character breakdowns. I think you go first this time, Joseph, with Mr. Fantastic.
All right, I'm excited. Let me tell you all about Reed Richards. Reed Richards was born in Central City, California, to Evelyn and Nathaniel Richards. Like his father, Reed was a prodigy with a high aptitude in mathematical sciences. He first enrolled in college at age 14, attending such prestigious universities as Caltech, MIT, Harvard, and the University of Vienna in Austria, where he earned degrees in mechanical engineering, physics, and mathematics, all by the time he was 18. While attending Empire State University in New York, Reed first met his roommate Victor Von Doom, who was a similar prodigy from the country of Latveria. The arrogant Von Doom almost immediately disliked Reed after he pointed out a miscalculation in his astral projection machine, and Von Doom switched rooms, before nearly blowing up his face with his device and getting expelled. You can learn more about this in our Superman vs. Dr. Doom Duel episode. Reed was assigned a new roommate, a football star named Benjamin Grimm. The two got along like brothers, and Reed shared his dream of building a starship to space. Ben told him that if that ever happened, he would pilot it. While enrolled in graduate school, Reed stayed at a boarding house operated by the aunt of Susan and Johnny Storm, whom you can learn more about in their respective Duel episodes. Reed and Sue developed feelings for each other, but Reed moved out, finding himself too distracted from his work. He earned more degrees in biology, chemistry, and electrical and aerospace engineering by age 22. Around this time, Reed's father went mysteriously missing. He moved back home to California, where Sue had just earned her doctorate, and the two began dating. Reed started working on his experimental starship using government funding that was later withdrawn. Wanting to prove his prototype ship worked in order to continue receiving funding, Reed decided to perform a test flight with his closest confidants, including Ben, Sue, and Johnny. The crew blasted off into space, and the flight was successful until the ship was bombarded by a chance storm of cosmic radiation that forced it back down to Earth. Everyone survived the encounter, but they discovered that their DNA had been altered, granting them superhuman abilities. Sue could turn invisible, calling herself the Invisible Woman. Johnny could burst into flame, calling himself the Human Torch. Ben developed a rocky hide, calling himself the Thing. And Reed discovered his body had become elastic and malleable. Ashamed that his error of not providing adequate shielding from cosmic rays had forever changed his friends, Reed silently concluded the only way for them to be accepted by society was to become superheroes and help benefit humanity. He dubbed himself Mr. Fantastic and moved the team into the Baxter Building in New York as he studied their powers and worked on inventions for mankind. And the team, including their costumes made of unstable molecules and their flying craft, the Fantastic Car. The Fantastic Four saved the world on numerous occasions, from threats like the Impossible Man, Annihilus from the Negative Zone, King the Conqueror, and Reed's former colleague and greatest nemesis, Dr. Doom. They gained the respect and adoration of society at large, as well as the superhero community who were all present for Reed and Sue's eventual wedding. Though the service was attacked by an army of supervillains, Reed was able to use a time displacement device he created to trap the bad guys, allowing him and Sue to get married in peace. They had their honeymoon on the moon. After more adventures, including stopping the world devourer Galactus from consuming the planet, and discovering the inhuman city of Adelan and the futuristic Wakanda in Africa, Reed and Sue made their greatest discovery yet, that Sue was pregnant with their first child, whom they named Franklin. The child was not a prodigy like Reed, but he exhibited vast psychic and reality-controlling potential from the moment he was born. Sue became pregnant again during a trip to the dimension known as the Negative Zone, but their daughter was stillborn. The Fantastic Four sacrificed themselves to stop the powerful psychic entity known as Onslaught, but their lives turned out to be saved by Franklin, who had transported them to a pocket universe of his own creation before restoring reality. Later, it was revealed that their son Franklin had also rescued his stillborn sister's mind and projected it back into its previous state in Sue's womb. Reed and Sue then had their second child, Valeria, who was a prodigy and exhibited powerful magical potential. In the Superhuman Civil War, wherein Marvel's heroes fought among themselves over the introduction of the Superhuman Registration Act, Sue and Johnny joined Captain America's anti-registration forces, while Reed joined Iron Man's pro-registration side, citing his work in a science called psychohistory as the basis for his decision.
Psychohistory? Oh, that's from Isaac Asimov's Foundation trilogy.
Right, yeah, it was incorporated into the Marvel Universe. He believed that without the Registration Act, billions would die in escalating conflicts throughout the universe, and helped fashion a prison in the Negative Zone for villains and non-registered heroes. The Fantastic Four fortunately reconciled in the final Civil War conflict. Reed later consulted with another team of his, a secret group of brilliant superhero minds known as the Illuminati, on how best to handle the threat of the Hulk, which resulted in them sending him into space, leading to the Planet Hulk storyline. The Illuminati also consulted on the secret Skrull invasion, which Reed helped repel by inventing a device that would reveal if someone was a shape-shifting alien or not. When Johnny was seemingly killed during a Negative Zone invasion, the Fantastic Four reformed as the Future Foundation, which would now try and solve all of Earth's problems through scientific means. Reed constructed a device called the Bridge, which would allow him to peer into alternate realities as a sort of sandbox to see how events play out differently. There he discovered the Council of Reeds, which, yes, predates the Council of Ricks, if you watch Rick and Morty.
I was about to say...
The Council collaborated on multiple universe-saving projects, including growing planets of food for Galactus and reigniting dying stars. The Council of Reeds wanted him to join them permanently and leave his family, but Reed declined and had to destroy the bridge and fight them off with the help of his father Nathaniel, who it turned out had been displaced through time while trying to build a time machine. Together, they defeated Reed's alternate selves and helped fight off a Kree invasion at a time when Johnny came back and the Fantastic Four fully reunited. They constructed a vessel capable of surviving the end of all things at a time when colliding universes were destroying the entire multiverse. In the Secret Wars event, Dr. Doom managed to save existence by usurping the power of the all-powerful Beyonders and constructing a new patchwork planet that he ruled over. Reed was amazed to see the world God Doom had created, but opposed his supreme control over all things. After an argument where Doom conceded that Reed would have found a better way, the Beyonders' power was transferred into Reed, who, along with his wife and kids, recreated the entire multiverse. When it was complete and the power was spent, the Fantastic Four reunited again. And that's his history. Powers-wise, Reed has the superpower of plasticity. His body is highly malleable, allowing him to bend, stretch, and contort himself into all manner of shapes. He can typically stretch about 1/3 of a mile before his stretched mass causes him pain. He can form his body into simple objects, such as a wheel or a ball, or flatten himself into a sheet to squeeze through cracks or cover wide areas. He can bulk up his entire body or select areas of his body, such as his fists, in order to inflict stronger physical attacks. Depending on the form he takes, such as that of a lever or spring, he can lift up to 1/2 ton. His elastic body lets him absorb the brunt of physical forces, including strong concussive forces, such as dynamite explosions, and he can even absorb piercing forces, such as knife stabs. His greatest power, however, is not his stretching ability, but his brilliant mind. Reed is one of the greatest scientific geniuses on the planet, with an even broader range of knowledge than even Tony Stark, though Reed himself would admit to Iron Man being the superior engineer. His mental processing is that of a supercomputer due in part to his ability to decrease the distance between his brain's synapses. He has created all sorts of futuristic and scientifically impossible devices, from an antimatter injection system that can destroy an entire planet, to a more fizzy and nutritious version of soda pop. His uniform, composed of unstable molecules, has limited tech capabilities such as location tracking, language translating, and vital scans. It can also stretch just like him. And that's Mr. Fantastic.
These two characters could not have had more completely different upbringings. I thought I would notice more similarities between the characters' backstories because that often happens, but that didn't really happen this time. I'm kind of surprised.
Good. I like it when they're different enough.
Yeah. Let me get into Plastic Man's origin. Now, Plastic Man was not originally a DC Comics character. He was first published by Quality Comics in 1941. When Quality Comics was shuttered in 1956, they sold a majority of their characters, such as Phantom Lady, The Ray, Uncle Sam, and Plastic Man, to DC Comics. But Plastic Man is arguably the most well-known of the Quality Comics characters. Plastic Man's real name is Patrick O'Brien. Born prior to World War II, Patrick was born to an abusive father, who died alongside Patrick's mother when Patrick was 10 years old. He grew up on the streets and fell into a life of crime, eventually joining up with a burglary ring when he was an adult. In the gang, he earned the nickname Eel due to his ability to narrowly avoid capture by the police. Specializing in safe cracking, Eel took part in the burglary of Crawford Chemical Works, a chemical plant. The gang was surprised by the plant's security guard, and as Eel fled with the other gangsters, he was shot in the back, causing him to tumble into a vat of chemicals. Despite being doused with an unknown liquid chemical that seeped into his bullet wound, Eel still managed to escape the plant, only to watch as his gang had fled without him in their getaway car. Abandoned and disoriented from the chemical burn, Eel struggled to keep running, making his way halfway up a nearby mountain before passing out. Eel woke up in a bed in Rest Haven, a mountain retreat run by Catholic monks. One of the monks had discovered him, and, sensing a great potential for goodness within Eel, nursed the criminal back to health while turning away any investigating police officers. Moved by the monk's kindness and fed up with the criminal lifestyle, Eel decided to turn over a new leaf. It was during this respite that Eel discovered that the chemical he was doused in had changed his biological makeup, making his body as malleable and shapeable as silly putty. Figuring that the best way to make up for his past criminal behavior and bring goodness and joy to the world was as a superhero, Eel altered his physical appearance and set out to foil a robbery by his former gang. When interviewed by a newspaper reporter about the ordeal, Eel dubbed himself as Elastic Man, but the reporter misheard him, writing instead about the new pliable paladin, Plastic Man, and the name stuck. Assisted by his bumbling friend and reformed pickpocket Woozy Winks, Plastic Man maintained his undercover identity of criminal Eel O'Brien in order to gain intel on the criminal community, using it to defeat villains such as Carrot Man, Mr. Green, and his super genius arch-nemesis, Dr. Dome. Due to Plastic Man's success, he and Woozy were inducted into the FBI, and Plastic Man abandoned his Eel O'Brien identity. Soon after, at the request of President Franklin D. Roosevelt, Plastic Man helped form the All-Star Squadron, and during World War II, he also fought alongside the Freedom Fighters, where his comical personality brought some much-needed relief during those troubled times. Due to his abilities, Plastic Man's body no longer aged. By the time of the Crisis on Infinite Earths event, he had seemingly not aged a single day. Plastic Man died during the Crisis, fighting alongside other Quality Comics characters on Earth X, though he was reintroduced into the mainstream DC continuity when the multiverse was merged into a single universe. Batman eventually took notice of Plastic Man's ability and personality and asked for his help in infiltrating Lex Luthor's Injustice Gang as the Joker, which Plastic Man succeeded in doing. Due to his success, Plastic Man was granted full-time membership into the Justice League of America, alongside other new heroes Steel, Zariel, and Huntress, who you can learn more about in their respective Duel episodes. Plastic Man once again provided comic relief in some of the League's biggest struggles against villains such as Mageddon, Queen Bee, and Prometheus, while proving integral in single-handedly defeating the likes of Dr. Polaris and a rogue Martian Manhunter when the other League members had already fallen. He also provided a crucial role when an entity known as id split each of the League members into two individuals, the superhero and the seeker identity. Plastic Man's alter ego, Eel O'Brien, struggled to contain his criminal instincts and made a point to the League members that they needed to return to one whole individual after he beat the shit out of Bruce Wayne.
How's that possible?
Well, Batman was the one who absorbed the fighting instincts and knowledge.
Okay.
Having been reacquainted with his criminal past, Plastic Man was also forced to confront that he had an illegitimate son named Luke Ernest McDonough, who he abandoned out of his fear of turning out like his own abusive father. Plastic Man requested Batman's help in scaring Luke straight after the boy began showing his own criminal instincts and joined a gang. During the Obsidian Age story, Plastic Man and the rest of the League were sent thousands of years into the past to the early days of Atlantis, where he was frozen, shattered into individual molecules, and scattered along the ocean floor. Lacking the technology at the time to locate each piece of Plastic Man, the League was forced to wait until they had returned to their present timeline to find and repiece Plastic Man back together. Having been conscious the entire time, going beyond insanity and back, Plastic Man decided to abandon his superhero career and devote his time to raising his son, taking up the new identity of Ralph Johns. Over time, he forgot what it was like to be Plastic Man and eventually forgot he was Plastic Man, until Batman requested his help and his son, overhearing Batman, displayed elasticity powers and told a joke. Plastic Man remembered who he was and started a new life balancing fatherhood, superheroics, and occasionally both, when training his similarly powered son Luke, codenamed Offspring, in how to be a well-humored hero. During the Blackest Night event, Plastic Man's heart was removed by the Black Lantern zombie version of the hero Vibe, seemingly killing him, though he was able to regenerate a new heart and avoided becoming a Black Lantern himself. In DC's post-Flashpoint continuity, the criminal Eel O'Brien was injured in a gang shootout with Owlman, the villainous Earth 3 counterpart to Batman, while inside a chemical factory. Batman took notice of his new abilities and his body's unique reaction to vibrational wavelengths. Batman used Plastic Man as a probe into the dark multiverse, the energies of which locked Plastic Man into a dormant spherical shape. He reawoke when he was re-exposed to the dark multiversal energies alongside heroes Mr. Terrific and Metamorpho. Together, alongside the intangible Phantom Girl, they formed a team known as the Terrifics, who explore the dark multiverse and fight the evil machinations of Dr. Dread. That's Plastic Man's history so far. Powers-wise, Plastic Man's abilities are fairly straightforward. With his elastic, malleable body, he can alter his size, shape, and density, allowing him to transform into almost anything, ranging from a liquid to an indestructible solid. His form also makes him both invulnerable and immortal, though he is susceptible to extreme temperature changes and vibrational forces make it difficult for him to shapeshift. That's Plastic Man. I guess one commonality they have other than their powers is that they both have sons.
Yeah, the theme of family kind of exists with both characters. Now that we got each character's history and abilities out of the way, let's go ahead and speculate on how one of these 1,000 simulations that we're going to run will actually pan out beat for beat. Now, we don't set any rules for this improvised scenario, save for the fact that when the characters meet, they don't know anything about each other than the other one is a threat that needs to be put down. We also say that the environment that they fight in has no effect on the battle itself. So essentially, they're fighting in a non-environment.
Right, because we don't record statistics for the environment, and certain characters can have an advantage in one environment over another. These characters have to win on their own merits.
We do say, though, that they start off about 50 meters apart from each other when the battle starts. So let's go ahead and get started. Mr. Fantastic on one side, Plastic Man on the other, 50 meters apart, no environment. Who goes first? I'm going to say that Reed is not going to go first because he's going to be very analytical and kind of observe Plastic Man to see what he can learn about him. I think he's going to consult his costume, and he's going to get a readout of his situation and surroundings, and try to observe who this opponent is and what he can do.
Okay, well, Plastic Man doesn't really appreciate the way that he's being stared at. So he decides to taunt Mr. Fantastic by turning into a giant chicken, and it's just like, bark, 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 bark. Then he like turns around and shakes his tail feathers at Mr. Fantastic. Then he like turns into an egg that launches over to Mr. Fantastic and just like splats right on his body, covering him in Plastic Man egg yolk. And he's like, oh, you have egg on your face. You egghead?
Okay, so essentially Plastic Man just egged Mr. Fantastic with his own body.
Exactly.
It's not a great attack.
Dude, you know how hard egg is to get off of any surface? It's incredibly difficult.
All right, so Reed is probably shocked to find like this goopy thing like splattered onto him. So I think what he's going to try to do is contain it. So what he does is he kind of folds himself over this egg yolk that's onto him and constricts into like a tight ball with no gaps, sealing any and all openings to kind of trap Plastic Man inside of him.
Okay, so you'll probably see like a ball form of Mr. Fantastic with these like fists and feet trying to punch and kick their way out.
Yeah, but you can't punch your way out of Mr. Fantastic, so...
Right.
So it's not going to do anything.
After a while, Plastic Man stops trying to punch his way out. He sticks his thumb in his mouth and starts inflating himself like a balloon, gradually expanding bigger and bigger and bigger, turning into a massive blimp inside of Mr. Fantastic, stretching him to his limit.
Oh, good move, because Plastic Man, I'm guessing, can probably stretch farther than Mr. Fantastic can.
Yeah, he can stretch almost indefinitely.
Okay, so that forces Mr. Fantastic to eventually release Plastic Man from inside of him in order to avoid snapping. So Mr. Fantastic leaps off of this Plastic Man balloon, forms one of his fingers into like this sharp needle, and just punctures Plastic Man.
Which, of course, will send Plastic Man flying around the environment, just making a fart noise as he deflates.
Except it's actually going to smell, because it's Plastic Man.
But Plastic Man maneuvers himself so that right when he runs out of air, he's above Mr. Fantastic, at which point he shapeshifts into a giant safe and just drops right on Mr. Fantastic.
All right, well, Reed sees this Plastic Man safe that's about to drop onto him, so at the last second, he transforms into this giant trampoline that just sends the safe back up into the air.
Okay, well, when Plastic Man gets launched back up into the air, that's when he transforms into a giant Swiss Army knife. And as he's going back down, he just ejects all of the knives and scissors and corkscrews, piercing Mr. Fantastic in all kinds of ways as he falls back on him.
Oh, ouch. God, that's a pretty good one. Well, it's not going to lacerate Mr. Fantastic because he can stretch to compensate, but I would definitely say that that would hurt him between, you know, all the different gizmos that the Swiss Army knife has. All right, so I'm guessing that Plastic Man now has Mr. Fantastic, who is stretched out like a trampoline, pinned down to the ground with his sharpness and weight.
Exactly.
Well, Mr. Fantastic is going to get himself unpinned, so Reed like makes one of his hands like super large and reaches and picks up Swiss Army Knife Plastic Man and just throws him away through the air.
Okay, but as he's sailing through the air, Plastic Man transforms into like a biplane with a face and goggles. And just changes his course so that he's headed straight for Mr. Fantastic to crash into him.
Oh, he's gonna dive bomb him?
Yeah.
Okay, so Mr. Fantastic stops this by turning his hands into these powerful, like, turbine fans that just provide updraft for Plastic Man's biplane form and just, you know, sends him gliding past him in the air.
All right.
And as Plastic Man flies past him, Reed slingshots himself up into the air and transforms into like this cannonball that just slams into Plastic Man and knocks him careening out of the sky.
Okay, but as Plastic Man gets knocked out of the air, he transforms into a parachute and then gently lands on the ground. At which point, he transforms into like a colossal sized King Kong. Just with like huge arms and sunglasses, and he just starts barreling towards Mr. Fantastic to pummel him.
Oh shit. Okay, so Reed freaks out. He sees this giant 10-story tall, dorky looking ape running at him, and he reaches into his pocket, which is made of unstable molecules in his costume, and it's stretchy just like him, and inside that pocket, he has a little pocket dimension. And from there, he pulls out a device.
Okay.
It's a weird-looking gizmo with a shiny red button, and he pushes it.
What does the button do?
Oh, you'll see. You'll see.
Okay. Well, Plastic Man reaches Mr. Fantastic and just knocks him into next week.
Except the fist goes right through Reed And in Reed's place grows this giant green monster Godzilla lizard.
What?
That's like 5 times taller than King Kong Plastic Man. And the Godzilla creature just chomps down right onto Plastic Man's head.
Okay, how is this possible?
Because Reed activated a solid light hologram generator that he quickly programmed with a Godzilla simulator.
Okay, so as this giant monster is about to chomp down on Plastic Man like scurries away, you know, like an ape. And hologram Godzilla gives chase, at which point Plastic Man turns into a giant banana peel, which hologram Godzilla steps on, trips and falls, breaking the hologram, at which point Plastic Man is nowhere to be seen.
What?
Yeah, he turned into something really small.
Okay, well, Reed reaches into his pocket dimension and pulls out a biometric scanner that pinpoints Plastic Man's location.
All right, okay, but this scanner, I'm assuming, has another big red button on it?
Yeah.
Okay, so Mr. Fantastic pushes that button, and all he hears is like a squeak toy. And he's like, what? So then he pushes it again, then all of a sudden that button transforms into a boxing glove on a spring, punching him right in the face.
All right, well, Reed's done messing around. He pulls out this other device from his pocket dimension that's like kind of like a big blow dryer. And Reed calls it a thermo-conducive microwave emitter. And what it does is it shoots these heat blasts out at Plastic Man. Now, I don't know if you know what happens when you superheat plastic, but basically it turns into oil. So essentially he melts Plastic Man so that he's just a pure liquid that's not able to take shape anymore.
Awesome. Well, extreme heat does cause Plastic Man to melt and lose the ability to shapeshift. So he ends up melting into like this massive lake just on the ground, at which point he starts slowly spinning into like this massive whirlpool that pulls Mr. Fantastic in towards the center. Like no matter how much he tries to stretch, he just keeps getting pulled into it, at which point he smothers Mr. Fantastic, drowning him.
Well, I'm saying that Plastic Man is too microwaved to be able to move at all. The microwave emitter fried his molecules, so he's not even really alive anymore to even move his body like that.
I don't know, Plastic Man's pretty resilient. I don't think his cells would go out that way.
So either Plastic Man's a lifeless puddle of goo, or he's still able to control his form. We'll go ahead and leave the match there, and run the statistics on these characters, and find out if Plastic Man was indeed able to get out of this one. We'll be right back. All right, that was fun. It's really hard to conceive of a way for these two characters to hurt each other.
Right.
And hopefully the whole pocket dimension was an acceptable way for our listeners for me to incorporate some of Reed's brilliant tech without accounting for environment.
Does he actually have a pocket dimension?
No, he doesn't.
Oh.
But, you know, he totally could. That's the type of character that he is. It's not nearly out of the realm of possibility. But it was fun to compare their stats. You know, when it came to like their evasiveness, obviously they're the same. Their movement speed is about the same depending really on what they transform into and what kind of force they're exerting in any one direction. We said that Plastic Man was a little bit more durable than Mr. Fantastic because we've seen him take greater hits. And we know that he's able to form into a more harder substance than Mr. Fantastic can.
And for that same reason, we also said that Plastic Man was slightly stronger. He just has a more durable form capable of lifting a little bit more.
Yeah, especially when he grows to massive heights. We gave Plastic Man the range edge because he can stretch farther than Mr. Fantastic can without overexerting himself.
But in terms of fighting skill, Mr. Fantastic actually came out on top in that stat. Just barely, though.
Yeah, because Mr. Fantastic has a black belt in judo, whereas Plastic Man is more of an unrefined brawler.
Of course, where Mr. Fantastic really came out on top was in intelligence. Plastic Man is about average, and Mr. Fantastic is arguably the smartest guy in Marvel Comics.
Yeah, he's arguably one of the smartest minds in the Marvel Universe.
So comparatively, Plastic Man came out barely on top in a number of categories where Mr. Fantastic really, really outshined Plastic Man in one specific stat. So I'm not sure how that'll translate in the actual results. I do know, according to our polls on Instagram and Facebook, that most people think Mr. Fantastic is going to come out ahead on this match. 58% of our followers on Instagram chose Mr. Fantastic, and a similar 57% chose Mr. Fantastic on Facebook.
And what about you? What do you think, Jonathan?
I am crossing all of my fingers that Plastic Man actually comes out on top here.
Well, let's find out the final results. According to 1,000 simulations on our Monte Carlo simulation runner, the winner of the Mr. Fantastic Plastic Man duel is...
Wait for it.
Mr. Fantastic.
Ah!
And actually, our Instagram and Facebook polls were pretty much on the money because Mr. Fantastic won 58.8% of the 1,000 battles.
What? That's crazy.
Plastic Man won 41.2%.
Damn, I knew it was going to be close. I actually thought it was going to be a little bit closer than that, though.
Now, the match is kind of close. It's not too close, primarily due to Reed's intelligence. Both characters are extremely resilient when it comes to physical damage, but they can't really hurt each other beyond the physical. Unless, of course, Reed is able to incorporate some sort of weaponized technology into the battle. If he doesn't do that, it's easy to see how this matchup could just go on forever between the two. But depending on the environment, if Reed is able to incorporate some of his brilliance, it looks like he's able to find a way to win a majority of the time.
I can't say I'm too surprised by the results. I'm hurt. I'm hurt in my heart. But not surprised.
Are you crying?
On the inside.
No, but I want you to cry on the outside.
Oh, it's not going to happen.
It'll be funny.
Too bad.
Well, guys, Marvel gets the win for this episode. Go ahead and let us know what you thought about the matchup by writing into us via email at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com, or you can find us on social media on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. You can find links to all of our accounts by visiting our website, dynamicduel.com.
If you visit our website, you'll also find a link to our merchandise store, which is on TeePublic, where we sell a variety of t-shirts and face masks and mugs and stickers and magnets, a bunch of stuff, which feature our no prize art, as well as additional fan art done by me.
Check it out if you haven't, guys. It's great. Who are you drawing this week, Jonathan?
I will be drawing Plastic Man. And I actually had a really hard time drawing Mr. Fantastic, so I can't imagine the difficulty that'll come with drawing Plastic Man. Should be fun, though.
Yeah, can't wait. That does it for this episode. In our next episode, we're going to have another duel pitting Mr. Terrific, the brilliant JSA character, against Forge of the X-Men, who is a mutant inventor.
This is in lead up once again to our 200th episode, where we'll be pitting the JSA against the Fantastic Four and friends.
Yeah, so look forward to that Battle of the Minds next week. As always, guys, please share, subscribe, rate, and review us if you haven't already. And we'd like to give a big, huge thank you to our executive producers, Jace Crump and John Spees. We'll talk to you guys next time.
Up, and away.
True believers.